Now, concluding remarks. So congratulations for the students who have, watched this video until here. Here, I just wanted to briefly go over the future prospects of a consciousness research. And first of all, understanding query structure is the first step to understanding subjective experience of others, including humans and also other animals. And that may be better for the, or required to develop better sensory substitution. Sensory substitution is a technique, engineering technique to give a sense of, the sensory apparatus to the those who are missing. So for example, blind people can be implanted with some kind of device using the input into, let's say, ear to generate, visual experience and so on. But we actually don't know whether these people want that or not. This is something that we need to understand through their, query structure actually, but it's really unknown. And here's another kind of, thought. This is a Japanese cuisine, which I really like. This is sea urchin and abalone. And until recently, I considered abalone and the sea urchin as just as a sort of food. Never thought of it as a sort of valid animal that could be potentially conscious. But the more you know about their ecology or the mechanism, it starts to become very difficult to reject the notion that they are kind of automata or some kind of loop that is completely automatic, and then gigantic kind of collection of the reflex. As I mentioned, the flies, even with the just less than 1 million neurons, they exhibit quite a bit of very complex behaviors. One thing, and they are known to be sleeping and awaking like us. But it's relatively new kind of finding over the last 20 years, really. And then they are anesthetized with the same exact kind of anesthetic drugs like us, and integrated information also behaves sort of as expected from the theory as well, right? That's the one that I showed in a couple of videos before. And same goes for this sea urchin and abalone. So this is a video that I found on YouTube, but sea urchin walks and makes some kind of decision on some kind of complicated way when they are in the sea. And this is the kind of interesting thing. So I mentioned that when we try to measure our query of the peripheral color, we need to show the stimulus at the bigger size so that the peripheral neuron, peripheral visual system can see it. When you want to test the ability of a system, you need to observe it at the optimum kind of situation. When the sea urchin are in the wild habitat, they do something really complicated, something very intelligent. Same goes for abalone. I didn't know that this small hole is used to kind of emit this eggs and sperms and so on, but they are also extremely complex and fascinating. And they both have the nervous system. So I really don't know whether they are conscious or not, but to get to know the behaviors and so on through their ecology and so on is the first step to understand what it's like to be them. Like as a consciousness researcher, you shouldn't stay as assuming what other animals are like without really trying knowing what they are like. The Yoneda lemma actually affects at this level. To understand what the animal is or what other people are like, you need to understand what their relations are with the environment and the other animals. And without really understanding the web of this relationship, we can never understand what it is. And same goes for example, this is a rat situation, right? Rats are it's not without any training in this case. When they are exposed to this animal, colleague rat that was trapped into the cage, these rats are known to spontaneously help them. And that seems to be quite compelling to start thinking about, what the rats are like. But, I can't overstate many of these kind of things. But if you know more about, how the rats behave and how the rats' brains are configured and how they are, responding in many different kind of perturbation, you start to have a better idea of what it is like to be a rat. And with this, through all these type of, accumulated knowledge and the sharing of the knowledge, we probably can do much better in terms of animal welfare and animal rights. I'm not saying that, all the animals are conscious like us. Definitely not. From the brain, architecture and from the behaviors, for example, sea urchin probably don't have any kind of, complex thinking or language, and same goes for the rats. But if you restrict that, the kind of the qualia that is associated with the waking versus sleep, most likely they do have this kind of stuff. And also, if it's a visual experience, maybe rats have that. Possibly, sea urchin or abalone may have some kind of chemical-based kind of qualia, like olfaction or taste, but I don't know really much. So knowing what they can potentially, experience and how they are behaving and how they are different from us is a first step to think about it. But ignoring all of them is just, not the right way. That's what I'm trying to say. Next, what does consciousness research bring to the society in terms of the engineering, if you're interested in this kind of direction? So the qualia structure is also quite important in understanding the meaning aspects of the information or its physical basis. And if you have heard of the information theory or study of the computation or engineering, meaning has been left out from science or engineering so far. But without that, can we really create AI or robots? So leaving out meaning is corresponding to or have a deep roots with the behaviorism in psychology, right? Meaning for something is only accessible to the system. And computer science or engineering shouldn't talk about anything. That's a sort of behavioristic kind of idea that applied to the engineer. As long as they do the same thing with the same input and output, we don't care about that. But if you continue to do that, then AI and the robot becomes like something that is completely unknowable to us. From the outside, it does behave like us with a given input and a given output. But inside of it, it's completely unclear. And then with this type of the things, we don't really know how they would behave in the situation where they are never exposed to. And the way they learn things are also completely alien to us, right? Like we can learn things with only a very small number of the examples, but this current AI or deep learning requires huge amount of data. You might have heard of this, AI, program called, AlphaGo that beat human, Go champion. But the way they learn the Go is with thousands of, millions of billions of all the available, Go strategies, and so also they themselves played themselves, and then they learned it through this kind of statistical learning. That's completely different from us, and they beat the human, champion. But of course, AlphaGo cannot walk, cannot eat, cannot manipulate the hand, and it cannot even answer something really stupid to us. That's because they are built and they learn for specific thing. It's very different from humans. So the way our humans work, and in terms of the meaning or conscious experience of qualia, that's probably very difficult, important for AI, building in the future. And Richard Feynman, the famous physicist, Nobel Prize, once said, "What I cannot create, I don't understand." And that's exactly the situation of AI robots. we don't understand consciousness. We can't understand, or well, we can't understand, consciousness, and we can't create it. So, even this kind of robot exists right now or in the near future. We can't be sure about their consciousness, and they, if you see this, and then iPhone says that I'm painful, it's just pretension, right? That we know so far. So we need to think, understand what's a pain quality structure, and then if we can, implant pain structure to this, iPhone and so on, then we can start to understand, their experience possibly or meaning of the pain in the robots. So this kind of consideration starts to imply already societal impacts of consciousness research. So that if you situate consciousness at the center, then clinical kind of implication is this sensory substitution or restoring qualia or consciousness meter. This is a photo of a small kid who was diagnosed as a vegetative patient, and just before the euthanasia operation, he just regained the conscious experience, and that happened just like a couple of years ago, and he's now healthy and alive. But because we don't have a good consciousness meter, this kind of tragedy is happening throughout the world, and now and possibly into the future as well. And also development and evolution, newborn babies or octopus, they are likely to be conscious in some way, but we don't really know. And this kind of finding is academically important, but also curiosity driven, and mind versus matter and laws and physics are all incomplete right now, and then we need to understand that through the consciousness research. And the organoid or engineering kind of issue is also implied. So here is a photo of the pig. Right now we can make the brain of the pig alive without their body. So if you're interested in a philosophical question, you might have heard of the brain in the bat, and that's now becoming kind of possibility. In human, we don't know we can ever do that or not. And when you do this, brain of the pig without a body, which is living, whether they are sleeping or unconscious or anesthetized or alive, we don't know. And the organoid is another technology that is becoming important, because many of the tissues that we need for the transplant plant can be now engineered by sort of the using the pluripotent kind of cells, stem cells. And then even currently, the brains can be grown on its own. The brain organoid probably starts to become like brain of its own, and potentially it creates consciousness of its own. But what kind of consciousness, we don't know. And this is another kind of the direction that consciousness research needs to think about. And then again, the robotics, artificial intelligence, and the brain-machine interface is definitely coming into the future or our society. And that's another sort of the intersection of the consciousness research. So the consciousness research is composed of, so far, mainly philosophy, psychology, neuroscience traditionally, but now also biology, cognitive science, linguistics, evolution, development, and clinical science, pharmacology, many associated areas. And recently, engineering, computer science, physics, artificial intelligence, mathematics, robotics, and information theory, and all of these are kind of coming together. So this is a quite remarkable and interesting interdisciplinary research topic into the future. So to conclude, it's kind of potentially discouraging, but the views that I provided throughout this class are highly simplified and can be misleading and biased. So maybe what I said could be wrong, proven wrong, and most likely it's wrong in the long run. Almost everything in this course material is likely to be revised. But that's actually good in terms of science. Unlike philosophy, or just a continuation or argument and argument, once we have a quite a good kind of question, and then if we can empirically test it, then we can make a progress. And that's the good thing about science. And consciousness science is the now science, consciousness research, okay? So I also want to now end with a couple of remarks that consciousness is so fundamental that many of the people even not notice how mysterious its relationship with the brains, right? So my guess is that many of you, the student, have never thought about this kind of questions before the class started, but now you have. So this may have a long-term kind of influence or benefits to you, because consciousness is the something that you have direct access to, and its result could be different from what other people are experiencing. Like even if I talked about imagery, you may not be able to imagine things. And what does it mean? Maybe then that makes the assumption about the consciousness or theory that builds on this imagery may be just plainly wrong. So you yourself can use your experience to improve your skills to be critical, empirical, and quantitative, and logical. And proposal that you made is just such a step to become a scientist. And it's even if you not become a scientist, starting to go through this kind of loops of the critical thinking, not to believe everything that I said, but to evaluate what I said with respect to your own experience or what you learned before. That's the kind of critical skills that is important for your future. So with that, I hope you enjoy the class and good luck with your future. And finally, I want to thank for all the collaborators, current collaborators and past collaborators, and hopefully future collaborators. All right, that's it. Thank you, and see you sometime.